So welcome everyone. I thought about doing this for quite a while. There is so many things, and some people know about the crimes that happened in Long Beach and some people don't. Of course, some are still unsolved, the mysteries. So we're gonna talk about them today. At the end, we can have a discussion about it. And glad you could be here today. Thank you. So in the Brooklyn Eagle on June 1st, 1908, while they were doing the dredging of the current Reynolds Channel, there were two gangs who were fighting internally amongst themselves, and they were working on the dredges. Now, strange enough, on the dredges, these two young fellow gentlemen were having this argument, and the other gentleman, he wasn't happy about anything that they were doing, and they were always in disagreement. Believe it or not, he took out a revolver and he shot the two men. One gentleman was shot dead right on the spot, and the other gentleman wound up being taken to a hospital in Mineola in Nassau County. They arrested this young fellow, and he was just like, I just did it. I did it. I took out my gun and I shot him. Now, they never really tell you why they were having this discussion, why they were fighting, but it's like the first time that in the paper that Long Beach was having a murder. He outright took his pistol out and he shot this man, and then he shot the other gentleman, and very close point. So I thought that this would be amazing to start off with because it's not a very big case. It was like an open and shut, of course, but it's interesting how things can happen and how they go very quickly. The next case is a really good one. Roberta Fiore many years ago had contacted the library looking for information on Dr. Wilkins. And I'm like, well, who's Dr. Wilkins? And she said, well, he was a physician in town who lived on Olive Street. And we got to chatting about this, and I tucked it away in my folder of questions. And I found an amazing amount and wealth of information on this doctor. So in the New York Times, dated February 28th, 1919, now Long Beach was in a very, very, very early stages of people living here all year round. We were not a city yet. We were still a village. And here comes a case that's unbelievable. His story is that he and his wife were at home in their house, and they were attacked by robbers in their house. He said it was a burglary, and basically his wife was shot dead. And this is a clipping right out of the newspaper. This is Dr. Wilkins and his wife, Julia. Now we're on New York Times, March 1st, 1919. They say they're on a trail for 3 burglars who on Thursday night, when discovered by Dr. Wilkins in his home on Olive Street, they found Mrs. Wilkins on the floor in a mass of blood. She was killed with a hammer. And basically, this was murder. Back in the New York Times again on the 14th of March, 1919, the Nassau County detectives and the city detectives are investigating this crime. They found a hammer with paint on the handle. They did not find any fingerprints. And it was said that Dr. Wilkins had nothing to do with this. They questioned him, and his wife's complete will was estimated about $65,000 estate was all left to charitable institutions, leaving him nothing. So he was trying to say that he could never have done this. There was no reason for it. We're now on March 15th, 1919, and the evidence is still not leading to any person in specific. They're still looking for these people that he said robbed them. And they did find the hammer that was used to crush her skull. And it was wrapped in a portion of newspaper, which was in Limbrook newspaper. They questioned Dr. Wilkins again. This is now New York Times, March 16, 1919. They said now they found a screwdriver with the same color green paint as the hammer that killed Mrs. Wilkins. There were blood stains on a hat that they found in the house. The investigators did not make a statement at this point. So the physician, who is Dr. Wilkins, tells his story again. They're questioning him again. New York Times, March 18, 1919. The DA says, we're very, very close about making an arrest, but we have not done it yet. There's no comment. Dr. Wilkins seems to have taken a small trip. He was in Baltimore, Maryland, and on the evening train to Penn Station, the police were actually looking out for him because he took a short trip after his wife's murder. And basically, when he came back, they were looking for this gentleman who had a beard and scruffy hair. And all of a sudden, one of the police officers in Penn Station said, "We see a man who looks just like him, but he's clean shaven, has hair cut short." But we approached him and they found him making a phone call in the telephone booth. And he did admit to his identity. He said, "Yes, I am Dr. Wilkins." They said, "You need to come with us." The district attorney for the county, District Attorney Weeks, was prepared to present evidence to indict Dr. Wilkins for the murder of his wife, Julia Wilkins. He was taken to jail to await trial, and this is now March 22nd. He said, "I don't have a motive to kill my wife. Why would I do that? She left me nothing." And the doctor's plea, of course, was not guilty. Now, this beautiful lady holding the kitty cat, on April 1st, 1919, they tracked this woman down in Canada. Her name was Audrey Munson. She was one of the first supermodels of what we would say a supermodel is today. She actually was the model that they used for the Walking Liberty half dollar. She was a model for many sculptors, and this was her profession. She was a professional model. And basically, he said he had nothing to do with this woman. She said, and her mother said, "We have nothing to do with the doctor. We're just neighbors." And basically, they tracked her down and spoke to her. And her story is very, very sad in and of itself, having nothing to do with Dr. Because just for having the association with this physician who killed his wife, supposedly, they felt that she was involved, and she lost all that she worked for on her own, that she became a very successful model, and she was put away by her mom. Her aunt, her niece, found out about her aunt. And in 1984, she was 93, and she was released from the asylum. She died at the age of 104. So her whole life was ruined just by an association with this gentleman. She was a pretty woman. Now we have testimony from a tailor. He said that Dr. Wilkins had sent his suit to be cleaned, and there were blood stains on the suit. The new trial would admit evidence that Dr. Wilkins killed his wife. But they're saying Still, he's pleading not guilty. They also said they found another will. So let's see what happens with the will. So they want to have him to have first-degree murder charge, and they were deliberating, and let's see what happens with this deliberation. After 22 hours, they said that Dr. Wilkins had been condemned to death, but he did not believe that he was guilty. When he goes to jail and they are awaiting for his sentencing to see what will happen, they found him hanging in jail. He hung himself. Now, is that actually because he killed his wife and didn't get away with it, or he really believed that he didn't do it? I guess we'll never know what he was thinking. Our next story is about a young woman. Her name was Marie Keith, and she was from France. She came here from France. She fell in love with a gentleman in Paris. It was a beautiful romance, and he was a lawyer from Manhattan. She loved him so much, but he said, "But I don't love you." Let's see what happens. He said, "This woman followed me here. I don't know anything about her. We had a tiff when we were in Paris, and she was beautiful, but we just didn't get along." And then he married another. Mr. Gidding was contacted by the Nassau County District Attorney. And as instructed, of course, this woman was taken to the mortuary, and the undertaker, they couldn't cremate her yet. They wanted to do an autopsy to find out, if anything, that they could find out what happened to her, because they did find her, she was drowned. She drowned. They did agree that they felt it was suicide. But this Manhattan lawyer, who said he had nothing to do with this woman, identified her as a different name. He didn't say Marie Keith. He called her something totally different. And yet they asked him, "Why are you involved with her burial? Why should you have to say what happens to this woman's body when she has family in France?" He said that he spoke to her family and that he's going to make the arrangements. So basically, this young woman drowned herself over this gentleman whom he says he had nothing to do with her. They just had a fling. Was it murder or was it suicide? We're going to see a lot of this going on in Long Beach. Let's see, we are up to Sweeney. I gotta see this. Chief Sweeney informed the police of the plot for the Gunman Murder. Sergeant E.K. Agnew, head of the Vice and Gambling Squad. This is now April 2nd, 1929. So basically, a confession of a rookie cop, Chief Sweeney, that a number of patrolmen had taken up a collection to hire a gunman to have this gentleman killed. He didn't take this seriously at all. He was like, "Oh, this is not real. They wouldn't do such a thing." But the reports came through that it was an attack on his life, but he didn't feel that it was. Sergeant Agnew verified that there was a plot against Chief Sweeney, and they were considering to put it to the district attorney in Nassau County, but Sergeant Agnew brushed it off and said the whole entire plot is not true. It just cannot be true. Why would they do that to me? Our next little crime, down in the West End, there was a 07 Indoor Yacht Club on Ocean Front and West End of Long Beach. And Edward Thomas Russell, an undercover agent for the Prohibition, was shot and seriously wounded. They said he was a dry spy. Detective Emil Morse and Captain Hardy found a bullet in the sweater belonging to Big Toe Slatery. Edward Thomas and Russell said his wounds were not serious. He went to the hospital and he said, "Oh, I had a bout of memory loss. I don't know anything about this entire affair. I wonder what happened." He got shot and he doesn't remember that it happened? So strange. Long Beach is a strange place. Now we're going to meet Marion Starr Wyman, born on January 27, 1906. Her parents, Frank Wyman, an investment banker, and Helen, a socialite from Andover, Massachusetts. Do we know this story? Tucker Wyman, Helen Wyman, faithful. This photo was taken on June 18, 1931. She's a beautiful young woman. Andrew Peters served in the House of Representatives in Massachusetts. President Woodrow Wilson backed him up. This young woman was 11 years old when her cousin, Andrew J. Peters, who was a cousin by marriage, sexually abused her. He gave her ether. Of course, we know is colorless and doesn't have any smell, and it can be vaporized to make numbness in your body. It seems that you're almost unconscious, but you're not. And he read how to have sex from books, and he seduced her. She was 11 years old. She had severe, severe depression. Her mother had her committed to a sanitarium in Massachusetts. After about 9 days, she was released. And basically, they told her parents, she just needs to get away for a while. She just got, she's a little bit depressed. So her father and her stepfather and her mother arranged to have her sister and herself to go on a Mediterranean cruise. They took a 9-month cruise on the sea, and she planned all her wilds on these cruises. She had lots and lots to drink, and she was very, very, very vulnerable. And at that point, she admitted that Andrew Peters often sexually abused her. So from the age of 11, she was being abused by that gentleman, which was her cousin by marriage. The faithfuls were paid off by Andrews, and Starr began drinking heavily and heavily again, over and over again. She was 18. She was doing barbiturates, and she was drinking. And at the age of 20, she was being, again, given to a doctor in her care, a psychiatrist, on the advice of the doctor that she should get more help, and that, what are you going to do? How do you help this woman? She's a young woman with an addiction that started out from abuse. What do we do? What happens to this poor girl? Helen and Starr faithful always sent Starr to the Mediterranean. They sent her to the United Kingdom. She went on her own and sought out bon voyage parties on ocean liners. She wasn't even a guest. She would just invite herself because she could socialize with ship's officers, and she was beautiful. And her nights were spent in nightclubs and speakeasies. She drank and she used drugs. She overdosed on sleeping pills, and she was committed again, this time to Bellevue Hospital. She was found drunk and naked and beaten in a New York hotel room. During a cruise, she met a gentleman who was the doctor of the ship, Dr. George Jameson Carr. He actually pumped her stomach and saved her from alcohol poisoning. And she fell madly in love with him. But it was only on her side, the obsession. It only bordered on her obsession with the doctor. He did not love her. Star Faithful was last seen at the Chelsea Pier in New York. And I love this postcard. It's so beautiful. There was a $100 reward in the newspaper. It said on June 5th, 1931, that Star had left her home at 9:30 in the morning wearing an expensive Lord & Taylor dress, a hat and gloves and stockings, and she carried with her only $3. She was going to get her hair done, but she never returned home. On Monday, June 8th, 1931, Daniel Moriarty was sifting through the sands of Long Beach. He combed the beaches quite often. And of course, this particular morning, he found a beautiful woman in the sand. Her hair all tangled and matted. Who was she? Why was she here? How did she die? He saw her legs shown, and he took her dress very gently and pulled them over her legs so that someone wouldn't see her so inappropriately dressed. And the craziness is, everybody knows, I guess, that when you find a body, especially if you know that there's no tides coming in, because he walked the beach a lot, so he knew about the ebbs and tides and the waves, that there wasn't a tide coming in for several hours, that he picked her body up and he moved her. And he tried to get people's attention to come to the beach to contact the police. Body of a missing girl found at Long Beach. So she was in Manhattan and she made her way to Long Beach. Was it suicide or was it murder? There have been many, many stories about Star Faithful. Have they come to any conclusion? We are in 2021 and we still have not found out what happened to this girl. The gentleman who abused her at age 11 was a big, promising person in the political world. Did he have anything to do with her death? I guess we'll never know. The night she died, she boarded a Cunard ship that was docked in Manhattan. They had said that she had met two unsavory men at a nightclub in Island Park. And then, of course, her body washed ashore at the foot of Minnesota Avenue in Long Beach. What a sad sight. One of the stories was they thought that she was killed somewhere else. And then they brought her onto a boat and they threw her into the water, causing her death was drowning. But again, they're all trying to figure out what happened to this poor young woman, but they did not. And this is from June 10th, 1931 in the New York Times. So they really think that he had something to do with her and that it was a murder. Star Faithful beaten and thrown into the sea. So this is the theory of the Nassau County District Attorney. Funny enough, she drank a lot and she took a lot of drugs. But when they did her autopsy, they found that she had no alcohol in her system the day she died. Her body had been bruised and beaten. And why would a woman who was a great swimmer choose to commit suicide by drowning herself? That would be so difficult to do if you were a great swimmer. So all of these things are factoring in. Is it murder or is it suicide? The grand jury listened to testimony and they did rule that she committed suicide. And so she's supposed to be cremated, but we'll see, because they're trying to see if there's anything that they have to hold this case up for before they do that. They found that she had not one, but 2 diaries. And in her diaries, she wrote about her sexual escapades and all her suitors. The entries were all written in her handwriting. Would it be possible that some of these prominent men who were in her diaries had reason to kill her if anything was made public? Now, Dr. Jameson Carr, who was the ship's surgeon who had saved her life when he pumped her stomach, said that he held in his possession 3 letters written to him about her wanting to kill herself. And he said that most of his dealings with her on a professional nature, that she was beautiful and she was attractive and she was very alert. But he did say that she wrote that she wanted to commit suicide. Star Faithful said she drank to like people, took sedatives to forget, and she did want to end her life. And she called her life worthless, a disorderly bore of existence. That's so powerful. Was it murder or was it suicide? In her letters, it did state that she wanted to die. This is New York Times, June 24th, 1931. It's amazing that one young person who was abused could be so hurt. Even her parents, her stepfather and her mother, did not much to help her. Her sister, there was no support system, and to be living a life that she felt that she wasn't worthy even to live. I just finished reading last night, I was skimming the book by Jonathan Goodman, The Passing of Star Faithful. It's a very beautifully and very, very researched book. And of course, the Butterfield 8. I didn't see the movie with Elizabeth Taylor, but now I'm going to watch it. But the O'Hara book, it's not supposed to be about Star Faithful, but the character sounds so much like her. And these works that I have on the screen are written by different people, and they all point to who Star Faithful was. In 1937, Long Beach elected a Democratic reformer, Louis Edwards. They said he was a Bronx haberdasher who retired early on family money, and that he settled into a wonderful home on West Beech Street with his wife and his 5 children. This is a great shot. This is from our local history collection at the Long Beach Public Library, and you could see Mayor Edwards right here. The Long Beach people are ready to install the elected mayor, Mr. Mayor Louis Edwards, who ran on the ticket, defeated Lorenzo C. Carlino, and he was elected to a 4-year term for Long Beach mayor. He was sworn in by the Supreme Court Justice Thomas J. Cuff. His goal was to restore Long Beach to its glory, and his first official duty was to appoint a new chief of police, city clerk, and controller, and following his inauguration in front of City Hall would be a reception. The building boom looms in Long Beach. Mayor Edwards said that he predicted that Long Beach would have a boom and that his seashore, and I'm quoting him, of sunshine and happiness, he called Long Beach. The Chamber of Commerce stated that the building permits for the year of 1937 were about 7813, and in 1938, they increased to $52,440. The mayor said the increase represents the confidence that the people are displaying in the future of Long Beach. That is a big jump in a year. The Long Beach police pay rise looms. Now, the Brooklyn Eagle wrote in February of 1938 that Mayor Edwards had met with the PBA and he made recommendations about the police. He felt that why should a new police officer coming into duty make the same pay as a police officer who had already been there to make as much money as they would, and they've already been on the job. So he recommended that there should be some kind of a graded salary increase for senior officers so that they would have to increase over time and not to have the same pay scale as an incoming officer, to also to have a 2-man patrol car instead of a single patrol car man, and also because they would need backup in an emergency. And then, of course, to have immediate payment of $1,000 to an heir of any policeman who was killed on duty. So these were his recommendations to the PBA. September 17th, 1939, he reduced salaries for the beach by 46%, and he appropriated $33,000 when they spent $63,000. How could you run the city? Well, actually, it wasn't even a city yet. Oh, yeah, it was in 22. Yes, it was. You realize that a city has long been handicapped by political corruption, and that we need to take care of our city. And our biggest fight is to rid the city of its menace. So this was written by Mayor Edwards. It showed that they had made a profit of $6,000 that year with the cut. Alvin Dooley is shaking hands with Mayor Edwards at the Police Benevolent Association gathering in Long Beach. Alvin Dooley served as president to his local PBA for 5 years, and he was extremely proud of that. He built up their treasury of $12,000 that would benefit the widows and orphans of officers killed on the job. Mayor Edwards removed Alvin Dooley from his job on the police motorcycle squad. He had his pay garnished on behalf of his estranged wife, May Dooley, and his 3 children, whom he had left in 1932. On November 1st, 1939, Dooley faced a PBA re-election vote. Mayor Edwards was supporting his bodyguard, Patrolman James Walsh, to be president of the PBA. Alvin Dooley lost the election. The headline in the New York Times on November 10th, 1939, policeman kills Long Beach mayor and shoots his bodyguard. The patrolman brooded over his grudge. Lewis F. Edwards was supposed to correct things that were going wrong in Long Beach, but it seems that he wanted his personal person to be the PBA. And then, of course, he now becomes the victim of this crime is because of his interference with Alvin Dooley. Alvin Dooley shot the mayor, and he actually called out, "Take me to the station. I just shot the mayor." And he said that he hoped that he dies. Now, this is somebody who cannot be in his right mind. How could he be in his right mind to even say such a thing when you uphold the law and that you want the law to be carried out and you wanted to do good for the policemen who lost their lives in the line of duty for their families? This is his wife, May Dooley, and she is quoted as saying, "He must have been insane. He would have never have done a thing like this." Alvin Dooley leaves Long Beach headquarters with the detective after confessing to the slaying of Mayor Lewis Edwards. Slain official leaves a widow and 5 children: Harry 11, Lucille 14, Gloria 15, Renee 19, and Joyce 22. The patrolman who was his personal bodyguard who was shot, he was not killed. This is his wife and his daughter. and his daughter is basically comforting her mother. Patrolman James Walsh and his wife at Long Beach Hospital recovering from surgery due to a gunshot wound to his kidney. The Nassau DA sought the death penalty. Samuel Leibowitz was his attorney, and he wanted to show that Alvin Dooley was insane when he pulled the trigger. Dooley leaves Mineola jail to appear at his murder trial. He pleaded not guilty. Policeman on trial today for murder. He is charged with murder in the first degree. Now, will he get off, or will he go to jail for life? Or will he get the electric chair? Mrs. Eva Dooley described her son as a changed man since the election. She testified that he was crazy, and the chief prosecutor, Leibowitz, called the Long Beach police officers Donnelly and Wolf to the stand. And they testified that the mayor wants them to vote for Walsh. So their leader told them that the mayor wanted them to vote for the other person. So he intentionally wanted him out. Now, would this have happened in our day, in this time, that his son at 10 years old took the stand at his father's trial? He was 10, and he tells about the changes of his dad. He said, he didn't sit with me to do homework anymore. He wasn't there. He was like he wasn't himself. He was a changed person. He said, Daddy always played with me. He always helped me with my lessons, and that all changed. Duly convicted of manslaughter, so the death penalty was not considered, and after 11 hours, the jury found Alvin Dooley guilty of manslaughter. What's crazy is that when he was leaving the court, he was so inside of himself that he knew that he did something wrong. But he said, they should have just given me the chair. He didn't really want to be alive, to be in prison, but he went to Sing Sing for prison to begin his sentence. On Tuesday, February 20th, Samuel Rappaport, a jewelry salesman, was robbed and killed in Long Beach, and Jack Clifford Homer was brought up on first-degree murder charges, killing Mr. Rappaport. Homer said, he made advances to my mother in our home at 522 East Beech Street. The New York Daily News said the Nassau County Police Department said that the jewelry man had 2 pawn tickets. Rappaport had them on him before he was thrown into the channel. So Jack Clifford Homer was 19 years old. He was a lifeguard, and he was accused of beating Rappaport to death with a tire iron. Homer is found guilty in Rappaport's slaying. He faced a 20-year term for murder. The psychiatrist testified, though, that he was in a state of psychic shock. Now, I had to look this term up because in 1940, what does that mean? And that he suffered from defective reasoning. So Homer got guilty of second-degree murder. So he did not get a first-degree murder charge, but a second-degree murder charge. Would have he gotten that today? I don't think so. And our last case, of course, is a little bit more recent. I was out of high school when this happened. And the reason why, even though it's been on major TV network when I was growing up, this young fella was a young teenager who was killed. And the story, most everybody knows that on Halloween night, he was last seen sitting outside his dorm room reading, and the murderer was never found. Chaim Weiss was 15 years old. He was killed with a hatchet-like weapon, which they never found the weapon, and the police are still looking for his murderer. But the Daily News, for me as a young person to read this on a front page, student hacked to death on Long Island. Body found in yeshiva dorm. That is so, like, it makes your body chill. Like, you get chills up and down your back. To think in a great place that we live, that how could such a thing happen in the 80s? This was in 1986. And there he is, this young Chaim Weiss. He was a rabbinical student at the yeshiva. He was violently struck to his head, what they say is an unknown object. He was last seen alive on November 1st, 1986. This was on Unsolved Mysteries, and it aired on May 6th, 1992. November 2nd of 86, the Daily News wrote about the students and everyone outside the building at 63 East Beech Street. The Long Beach police said they did not find a murder weapon. It may have been an axe. In the New York Times, tears of disbelief at a funeral for a slain yeshiva student. How could such a horrible thing happen to this young fella? Chaim Weiss's father, Anton, who's to the left, with the Nassau County DA, offered a $25,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of the murderer. And this is now 2013. This is many, many, many years later. This case has been opened several times, once in 13, once in 2015, and once in 2017. It's not that long ago. They still have not, after a huge investigation with many, many openings of this case and interviewing many, many students who were in the place, the facility, and also the rabbi and many, many people, and they were not able to come to any conclusions about the person who killed this young fellow. I'm closing my program with this today to show us that no matter what century we're in, that we can always be having people hurt and killed right under our noses and not know what happened, because they're taking their lives are taken from us. And this young fellow, of course, was a teenager. So this one is very dear to me because he lost his life. Why? We're not really sure. There was so many stories that circle this death, but may he rest in peace. And he is buried in New Jersey. His case still remains unsolved. And they actually are rerunning that right now on Netflix. They're running the Unsolved Mysteries. So I thank you for coming today and sharing with us. I appreciate all of you joining us today at our library program.